to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now, joining us, of course, as usual, is our co-host for NLL Lacrosse Talk, Gary Grube, and we have a very special guest, a Hall of Famer and Coach Dave Pietramala. I said that like my mother would say it. She would be so proud.
How are you, Frank? How's it going?
Good. Can't complain at all. It's one of those things that you hope for, and that is that you have another day that you're on the right side of the grass. So I am today, so I'll continue as if that's where I am. Dave, welcome to the program. Great to see you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate your time.
We appreciate yours as well. So let's start with the first question we always ask, and that is, okay, why lacrosse? When did it happen? Why? Where were you?
Well, that's an interesting story. I was a baseball guy my whole life. Dad was a baseball guy his whole life. And in about seventh grade, my neighbor, a guy lived around the corner, introduced me to lacrosse, kind of out playing on the front lawn. I took interest in it. And, he shared with me the game a little bit, and I got my first stick. And in seventh grade, I went to sign up for the Hicksville Junior High School lacrosse tryouts. And as the coach walked around and was, just introducing himself, he asked me my name. I shared my name with him. He said, "What grade are you in?" I said, "I'm seventh grade." He said, "Son, you're too small. Why don't you come back another time?" So I went home devastated, as you could imagine, and went back to baseball in eighth grade. And then in ninth grade, when I went to St. Mary's High School in Manhasset, there was a gentleman named John Espy. John was the former head coach at Duke University, at Stony Brook. He's worked with Team USA in a number of different roles. And he was my high school coach and my high school basketball coach, and asked me if I'd be interested in coming out and playing lacrosse. I really took a liking to him and said, sure, I would love to. And when I got out, he said, "You have 3 jobs. 1 is to play defense, 2 is to pick up ground balls, and 3 is to screen the goalie. And if they shoot high, duck. If they shoot low, jump." And that was my first taste of lacrosse. Coach Espy left after that year, and I again went back to baseball. And I was just, I had such an affinity and great relationship with him. I was so disappointed that he left. Played baseball my sophomore year in high school, and I missed lacrosse so much, went back to it my junior year, and decided I wasn't a very good midfielder and picked up a pole. And that's basically when my lacrosse career started. So basically my junior year of high school.
Field lacrosse, of course, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Let's make that clear. What's the difference? Yeah, go ahead, Gary. Go ahead. I'll ask after.
Okay, I was just going to say you were convinced to go to Hopkins for college. You wanted to go to Maryland. Your dad wanted you to go to Hopkins. Why did he want you to go to Hopkins, and what was your affinity and love to go to Maryland for?
Well, you did a good job doing your homework, that's for sure. I was fortunate to be recruited by a number of different schools. I looked at West Point. I looked at Loyola College at the time when Dave Cottle was there, Maryland and Hopkins. And I really I hit it off with Coach Dick Adele. He was such a terrific guy. A father figure, just the kind of guy you wanted to play for. So I was very much, convinced that was the right place for me. And maybe more importantly, that he was the right coach for me.
Right.
Just had a wonderful relationship with him. My father, on the other hand, knew his son better than he knew himself, and felt like Hopkins, being a smaller school, a little bit more, smaller classrooms, a little bit more individualized, was a better fit for me. And at the end of the day, it turned out that, it all worked out pretty well. It was a good fit for me, and it was a great place, and the chance to play for, a Hall of Famer like Don Zimmerman and Bill Tierney. They were a great fit for me, and I learned a lot from them, and owe those men a great deal.
And you had a storied career at Hopkins, part of the '87 national champions. That was the first one, wasn't it, for Hopkins?
They had won. So when I chose Hopkins, they were coming off of the 85, 84 championships, and had lost to Syracuse in a heartbreaker in a great, great lacrosse game in 1983 held at Rutgers.
Okay. And you won the Schmeiser Award, top defenseman 88 and 89. Enters Award top player in 89 as well. Also All-American 3 years. So, yeah, you had a very storied career there. Obviously, it was a good choice going to Hopkins.
Yeah, I was fortunate. I got to play for really, really good coaches. I hate to say that I was a bit of a pain in the rear end, but I was. And they were extraordinarily patient with me, yet were tough on me. I was blessed to have guys that challenged me to be a better human being, challenged me to be a better player. I'm not sure I really understood what it took when I got there, and they really helped me. And I had a great chance to play with some really terrific players. You're only as successful as the guys that are around you, and those guys afforded me the chance to maybe do some of the things that I did well, and looked out for me and helped me to cover up the things maybe I didn't do so well.
Right, sure. You moved on and you were doing club play, Mount Washington Lacrosse Club in the 90s, and also MILL. Now, we've had a bunch of guys from MILL on, always talking about the Wild West when it comes to lacrosse comparative to now. As a field player, how difficult was it to transition to box?
Well, I think we all thought we were better than we were. And when you watch, the true box lacrosse players play, the Canadians, the natives, they play the game the right way. They understand the game. They understand the nuances of it. The skill set is clearly been developed by that game. We were at the time, at least I could speak for myself. I was an American field player just playing field lacrosse in a box arena. And, wasn't, again, you look back and you wish you knew then what you know now.
Sure.
When you looked at the likes of Gary Gate and Paul Gate and a guy by the name of, I believe it was John Veltman, who played, in the league then, you start to recognize the skill level, the IQ for the game, the understanding of the picking game, deception, the skill level, and we just, most Americans just weren't, to that level. But the league was not filled at that time with Canadians. It was actually filled with Americans and field players, and it's obviously since changed. And it's filled with guys that have grown up playing that game with the Canadians and the Native Americans.
You told us a little bit about, making the transition from field to box lacrosse. We've heard other people's opinions on what the difference is, being able to play, in a box, literally, in a tiny area, be able to, handle the physical play. For you, what was the toughest part of the transition from the field to box lacrosse?
Yeah, I don't think I had problems with the physical portion of it. I like to believe my size helped me there. In the picking piece, I don't know that was as much of a challenge. Frankly, I think it was the skill and the ability to score. It was just, a lot of field players fake with their arms, while, young men that grow up or guys that grow up in the box game, they fake with their head, their shoulders, a little wrist fake, a little pump fake. The skill level and the ability to play and perform, maybe is the better word, in such tight quarters is the thing I think that was the most challenging for me. The ability to catch the ball and have it in and out of your stick and accurately put it in a very small area was something that was a challenge for me. The ability to, fake and not have to fake with your hands all over the place, but just little deception, a little wrist fake or a little head fake or shoulder move. Those were the areas that I found to be extraordinarily challenging. Scoring was, in my opinion, difficult. You couldn't just wind up and just shoot it. You had to be skilled. You had to be accurate. You had to understand how to move a goalie. And as a field player, and more importantly, a field defenseman, I didn't have a great understanding of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think your size tells me something about why you might have liked box lacrosse a little better than field lacrosse. Stop smiling. Stop smiling. Stop smiling. No, just kidding.
Well, just think about the Pittsburgh Bulls with your old friend Ron Klausner, with him at 6'4" and you right away. It becomes an ominous.
Yeah, we had again. If you look back and you say, okay, I'm going to pick a team, I'm not sure that's the team I would have picked.
Mm-hmm.
As knowing what I know now, we had a bunch of field defenders trying to play a game that's an extraordinarily skilled game that you got to understand the nuances. And, while we knew how to play the picking game, I'm not sure we were great at executing it in the offensive end of the field. And again, as we talked about, that skill set and performing in tight quarters, we clearly were lagging behind those guys that had grown up playing that game.
Gary,
Sure.
I'll just add one word: and pace. And pace.
Yes.
Go
Well,
ahead.
yes, of course. Now, you also played for the U.S. National team, 2 championships, 2 world championships, 90 and 94, and named MVP in 90. How great were those teams? Those must have been absolutely phenomenal teams.
Yeah, I'm not sure anything, in my opinion, compares to, for me, college lacrosse, being in a locker room with guys, practicing every single day, living with them for 4 years, being with the same coaches. There's nothing like that camaraderie. And it's tough to find anything that compares to it. But what I will say is the level of play when I went and tried out for Team USA, and to be around the best players in the world when we played in the World Games. Guys like Gordon Purdy, Gary and Paulgate, Kevy Alexander's a name that was there when I first broke in. Stan Cock, guys like that were just terrific players. It was exciting to be at a level where everybody around you was not just good, but really good. It was exciting to be at a level where everybody was a fierce competitor. And practices were just outstanding to be a part of. So for me, to play against and with some of the guys that you grew up idolizing. I mean, I grew up idolizing John DiTommaso, and there I am, playing side by side with him. Vinny Sombrato, who is, has been a staple in the U.S., one of the great players that I'm not sure is talked about enough. To play alongside guys like that and have a chance to not only watch them practice, but watch how they comport themselves and conduct themselves, and how they treat their teammates, how they lead. For a young guy, I mean, I was fresh out of college, so for a young guy to be a part of a team like that was a real privilege for me.
Now, you finished off your playing career. How did you maneuver into getting into coaching initially?
Yeah, it kind of happened in a very roundabout way. So I had to go back to college for a 5th year to finish my academics. Was done with it, my eligibility, and I was asked by the head coach at the Gilman School if I would be interested, with my free time in assisting them as a defensive coach for the Gilman School high school team, and agreed to do it. And quite honestly, fell in love with it. I absolutely fell in love with it. If you asked my teammates and told them that I would coach for a living, I'm sure every one of them would have said, no way, no how. Was never really, my plan. I come from a middle-class family where my dad worked for Pfizer Pharmaceutical and then St. John's University. I knew about business and marketing and kind of thought I would go in that direction. And lo and behold, I spent a couple of months coaching high school. And then I was fortunate that when I finished schooling, Tony Seaman, the former head coach at Hopkins, reached out while we were in, I believe we were in England. We were in Perth, Australia. And he had asked if I would be interested in coaching. And I said I would, went back and just loved the experience, loved the competition, found it really exciting to be on the other side of things and, have to try to achieve success, from a coaching standpoint, not a playing standpoint, and just fell in love with it and, never looked back from that moment on.
And then you went, you went to Hopkins, and before you were a defensive coordinator at Hopkins first, right?
I was actually my first year at Hopkins. I was not. I was just a part-time coach making a whopping $3,000. I worked at an aluminum extrusion factory locally, so I could get out of work at about 2:00. So I punched in at 6:00. I left at 2:00. Went to campus and coached. So I was a part-time guy that was helping out. And John Hawes, who is the former Carolina head coach, at the time was the defensive coordinator. So I did that for a year, and then I moved on to the University of Pennsylvania for 3 years, where that was my first stint as a defensive coordinator.
Okay. And then you moved into Cornell, which was your first head coaching job?
Yeah, it was Penn for 3 years, Loyola College for 3 years, back to Hopkins as an assistant and defensive coordinator for the 3 years. And then I think at the age of 28, I took over as the head coach at Cornell University when Coach Richie Moran stepped down.
And made a big impression because you were coach of the year in 2000. Let's talk about the Cornell program.
Yeah, what a great experience. I was fortunate to be hired. It's amazing when you look back and you think about, gosh, if I knew now what I knew then, I'm not sure I would have made many of the decisions that I made. But a gentleman by the name of Charlie Moore, who is an Olympian, gold medalist in track, was the athletic director at Cornell University. And Andy Noel, who's now the current athletic director at Cornell, was the associate. Those two gentlemen hired me, and I had 3 great years at Cornell. The kids were terrific. They bought in to our culture, what we were selling. I had the good fortune of hiring Jeff Tambroni, who took over at Cornell when I left, and now is the current head coach at Penn State. I hired Ben DeLuca, who is also the former head coach at Cornell and the current head coach at Delaware. So I had great assistants. I just had a great experience at Cornell University. It was a place that cared about lacrosse. It was a place where I felt you could win because of the rich history and the success that Coach Moran had. And it took us a year or two to get our feet on the ground. But by our 3rd year, we went back to the NCAA playoffs and had a good run at it. And I'm grateful to the Cornell administration for the opportunity they provided such a young coach.
Right. So we move on, we go around to 2001, and you get a chance to go back to your alma mater, Hopkins, and our story begins for the next 20 years. Now, you got into Hopkins and basically were there to resurrect the program that you played so much a part of when you were playing. Let's talk about the early days there, because it was a smoking program when you first got it rolling.
Well, you know what? I took over a program, that, it wasn't in bad shape. Again, it's all about expectations and standards. And the expectation at that time was, national championship or bust. And, they hadn't won since 1987. That doesn't mean that, they didn't have quality teams.
Yeah.
I was there when Tony Seaman was there. Coach Seaman did a terrific job. Then John Hawes took over and took them to the playoffs. So it's not like I took over, a car that was beaten and battered and could barely, operate on the road. But we went in and we wanted to try and do some different things. We were fortunate. Our first recruiting class turned out to be a home run. We were very fortunate at the time. We had a significant amount of scholarship money. The class that we were recruiting that year, which was Kyle Harrison's class, and the group of young men that we were fortunate to attract to Hopkins, they helped us kind of rebuild the foundation. That our first recruiting class, and again, I was really fortunate. I had two great assistants. I had Seth Tierney, who's the head coach at Hofstra now, and I had a gentleman named Bill Dwan, who was with me for 20 years as my associate head coach. We had the good fortune of attracting a transformational class, and you look at it and you got a guy like Kyle Harrison, who's the headliner now, wasn't the headliner at the time. Players like Peter Lesor, who at the time was a premier player on Long Island, Chris Watson, guys like Tom Garvey. I mean, that class was our building block. And, in their 4 years at Hopkins, they never lost a game on Homewood Field. And with the schedule that we had played back then, which was one of the, if not the toughest schedule in the country, to have a class play that kind of schedule and never lose a home game in 4 years, is really special. But, I think the thing that took place there was we suffered a little bit. In my early years, and I don't mean suffered in that we didn't have success. It just took time. We had to learn how to win that big game again. So in our first year, we lose to Princeton in the first round of the playoffs. And you look out on the field, and at one point in time, we got 8 freshmen out on the field. Now that's hard to achieve success with 8 freshmen, but it bodes well for the future of your program.
Of course.
Next year, we take another step. And then in 2003, we get to the Final Four in the national championship game, and we lose to Virginia, who had just a terrific team. All those things had to happen for us to win in 2005.
Right.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, please go ahead.
I was just going to ask you, because what I'm hearing is that we haven't talked about this, Gary, with coaches. The decision to, you talked about investing in the future. In other words, you have a bunch of players that are freshmen, right? And then you have to have the veterans, the guys that have been there for a while. And how hard is it to get that delicate balance when you want to win? Because winning 1 year isn't what anybody wants. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's not what anybody wants. They want to have a consistency. So how much of a challenge was it to have enough young guys that are an investment in the future and older guys, more experienced, that allow you to enjoy the investment that they've had and they contribute to today's success?
Sure. It's a great question, and it's a critical component. Guys like Bob Benson and Adam Doniger, Connor Denahan, Michael Pizer. These are guys, names that, were important players in us building that foundation. And quite frankly, without those guys, 2005 never happens.
Right.
And I think that's what we're talking about here is, we had that core group of guys that helped us, build not only a foundation, but a solid foundation. They helped those young players. I mean, Adam Doniger taught every young player that we had how to work. What does it mean to show up and practice hard every single day? What kind of investment do you need to make away from the field? Meaning you practice for 2.5 hours. Everybody does, but champions do more. And, I'd come in, and every Sunday there is Bob Benson and Adam Doniger out on the turf, shooting balls on a Sunday afternoon after a win or a loss the day before. So, those are the forgotten names that people don't so much realize that without them, that 2005 senior class that never lost a game on Homewood Field, I don't know that happens.
Right.
So they taught them how to work. They helped teach them how to police themselves, what the culture was, what the standard of excellence was. And it's always hard as a coach when you take over a program, you don't want to just say to the seniors, okay, well, we're done with you. And we're just moving toward a youth movement. I think you owe those guys more than that. And, again, the Connor Denahans, the Rob Frattarolas, the Sean Nadelins, Brendan Shooks, Brandon Testas.
Right.
These are all guys that were there my first year that we were their third coach. I was their third head coach.
Right.
And, here they are learning a third system, a third culture, so to speak. And to their credit, they bought in. They allowed us to coach them and coach them hard. They allowed us to, put standards on them both in the classroom, off the field, and on the field. And the fact that they bought into that made our job easier with the next group. History is passed down, tradition is passed down. Well, the way to do things the right way is also passed down. And those guys did a great job passing that down and paying it forward, so to speak. And when we had the good fortune in 2005 to get back to the national championship and win it after losing 2 years in a row in the Final Four, all those things are a part of why we had success in that year 2005.
It's interesting that you use the word culture. Sorry, Frank.
Yeah, no.
Because I've heard you in interviews before talking about your recruiting culture over talent. It'd be nice to have both, but culture over talent. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, culture beats talent every day, in my opinion. And culture with talent is where you start to get consistency. You start to get what Frank was talking about, and you're there every year. You're making a run at it every year. There's a consistent level of excellence year in and year out. You marvel at some of those Hopkins teams in the 80s, the Princeton teams in the 90s, and the Syracuse teams. It's not easy to win, but it's harder to win consistently. Winning the first one isn't the hardest. It's winning the next one and the next one and the next one because, human nature says when needs are met, you get comfortable, you get complacent. And that's culture. Culture is, how your culture is your daily behavior, what you do every day. Culture is it me or is it we? Culture is we're on time. The locker room's clean. We're detail oriented. We're disciplined. We treat people with respect. We leave places better than we found them. There's a saying I came across not long ago, and we're really working hard, in particular defensively here at Syracuse now, to use that as our kind of rallying call and our mantra. And it's to be successful, you need to be great at the things that take no talent. And it doesn't take talent to put something that you picked up off the ground in the trash can. It doesn't take talent to push your chair in or say please or thank you. It doesn't take talent to work hard every day.
Right.
Now you start to translate it to lacrosse. It doesn't take talent to make an appropriate approach on a ball carrier or communicate defensively. It takes, talent and ability to be able to cover a guy that's an athlete. But if you can do all the things that don't take talent, now you're developing a heck of a culture. And, I'm not saying talent doesn't win ball games. It does. But you can have the most talented team. And if you got a lousy culture, I'm not sure how easy it is to win. You can have a less talented team with a better culture, and I'll take my chances with that group.
Let me see if I can. Sorry.
When you look at like in Alabama and football, you think about the old Montreal Canadiens and their culture and talent. That's where you start to see consistency, is when you've got a culture that part of that culture is recruiting high-level talent. But when that high-level talent is in that kind of culture and they're doing the little details, they're paying attention, they're disciplined, that's when you really start to achieve success on a consistent basis.
That culture that you're talking about, if I can frame it and offer an opinion that you can comment on, it comes to the mind of the greatest players in every sport. People are under the misconception that great players can't play anymore. It's not about playing for players. To talk about that culture, the culture of winning isn't about what happens on the floor. And I want to highlight it further. You started to, and you did quite well. It's what you do in preparation for that game. And I'm talking about all year round. The reason why great players retire, because of that culture, it's because of that culture you're referring to. It's not because they can't play from the opening whistle to the closing whistle. It's what they knew what they need and recognize that they need to do the rest of the time before they get on the floor. When they retire, it's because they just don't have it to give anymore, because they're either getting a little bit old, a little bit slow, and they understand how much they have to do to get to the floor. And that's what makes great athletes. And what you're describing, I don't know, I think you understand the hair I'm trying to add in here, that, where it's about commitment and understanding whether you can make that commitment. It's great that they, obviously the best thing is when they understand the commitment, but the really great players, they know, and they won't be that player. Many of the great players, they understand what it takes to win, and if they can't get to that point before they get on the floor, they retire. And that's why most of them retire.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, and to be honest with you, those guys have a keen understanding of what it takes to be successful, and they're special because they're selfless. And when they can't meet those daily needs, culture wakes up every morning. Culture is morning, noon, and night. It's not part-time. It's not just when you're on the field. I mean, quite frankly, that's the easy stuff. Culture is knowing the right things to do when no one's watching. Culture is, when you wake up, eating the right way. When it's post-practice is, getting your muscle milk or your nutrients. Culture is, making sure you take care of your body, and those are the daily habits. We call it daily behavior, that it really becomes challenging the longer in the tooth you get and the older that you get. It becomes harder not to play the game, but to do all those other things, not just sometimes, but all the time.
Right, sure.
And sometimes great players leave because the culture of their team has changed, and they don't want to be a part of that culture anymore.
Now, we were talking about the beginning of your stay at Hopkins, and again, it was a smoking record, 55-6, only three losses during the regular season, and the entire record was 205 against 89 losses. The second half of your tenure at Hopkins, becoming part of the Big Ten, do you think that had something to do with the program not being as successful as the original 5 years?
No, I don't think that's the case at all. I actually think, going into the Big Ten was an important move, for the institution from a lacrosse standpoint. Lacrosse has changed, and it's important to change with the times. And you're either with them or behind them, and we needed to be with them. When I was there, we always played a challenging schedule, and the reason why we did that was because we were an independent. And the sport changed quickly to automatic qualifiers. And as an independent, it becomes a little bit more challenging to make the NCAA playoffs because you don't have a conference AQ. So we had to make sure that we played a top-notch schedule so that we could qualify as an independent based off our RPI and strength of schedule. What happens, though, is that becomes more challenging every year. When I played, there were no Georgetowns. There were no Dukes. All of a sudden, there were no, a lot of these programs that are out. There was no Albany.
Right.
Now, all of a sudden, there's a Georgetown, there's a Duke. There are programs that are talent. There was no Richmond. There are talented programs now, and it gets more competitive. So it was the responsible thing to do, I think, at the time, to join the Big Ten and get a second bite of the apple, meaning you could qualify as both an automatic qualifier and as an at-large. And having those two bites at the apple was important. I think, where we fell down, and I'm a realist, and I like to believe I'm a pretty transparent guy, is I thought we allowed the early recruiting to get the better of us. I don't think we played to our strengths. And I've learned that, the hard way. And what happened was the recruiting started to change. And we went from recruiting juniors and seniors to recruiting sophomores, and then to recruiting freshmen, and then to actually recruiting kids that just finished their 8th grade, haven't played one down of lacrosse on the varsity level, and we're recruiting them and, accepting their verbal commitment. One of our strengths was getting to know a kid, defining what kind of heart he had, defining what kind of commitment he had, coming to the conclusion, is he our kind of guy? Is he going to fit into our program and do the things culturally, like Frank and I were talking about, to be successful in this program? We were taking kids off of an unofficial visit, not an official visit, not a whole year or a whole 6 months of phone calls, where, we felt like we were really good when we could get to know the kids. We were really good when we could get in their homes and spend time with them. Our ability to evaluate at a very high level was certainly better with more information. And I can say this, we weren't the only ones that suffered from it. There were other programs that have suffered from it too. And what happened was, you're just not on the money with as many guys as you need to be. You're spending money, and you can't have your scholarship money sitting behind you. It's got to be out on the field in front of you. So I think the early recruiting was something that I don't think I was courageous enough to say, you know what, we're going to wait. This isn't what we do well. We need to take the time to get to know these guys. And maybe we operated out of fear a little bit. And the fear was, well, we're going to lose out on a lot of really talented guys if we don't take our shot at them now. And if they want to come and we don't take them, they're going to go somewhere else, and we're going to wind up playing against them. And that was maybe not the most appropriate approach. I think if we could have found a greater balance between taking some guys early and then waiting and holding off and not filling our classes early, and maybe going after some later developers, spending more time getting to know the kids, the families, and who and what they really were. I think that would have helped us. I think that would have helped us a bit more.
Okay, so after 20 years, you guys part ways mutually. Legendary Sports Group. Let's talk about that. You're now not coaching, and they come, and let's talk a little bit about what they were and how you fit in your role with them.
Sure. Well, when you're anywhere 20 years, sometimes you outlive your support. And quite frankly, times change, places change. You think about the business world, and every time a company's bought and a new group takes over, the culture changes. The goals change, the process, how you're going to get from A to B and be successful changes. Quite frankly, Hopkins as an institution changed. And your ships aren't always sailing in the same direction. So we part ways. And here I am for the first time in 20 some odd years, not on a lacrosse field. And, quite frankly, not an easy situation. And I was blessed that Brendan Kelly, who is the owner and CEO, president of Legendary Sports Group, which is an event group, reached out. And one of the gentlemen that headed up the lacrosse portion of Legendary Sports Group was Coach Dave Cottle. I had the good fortune of working for Coach Cottle for 1 year at then Loyola College, now Loyola University. Had a great relationship with Coach. And he said to me, look, just come and listen. Before you make any decisions, come and listen. I said, Coach, I don't want to be in the event business. He says, I know you don't. So we have some neat ideas. Come and just hear us out. So I went and I visited with Brendan Kelly and Coach Cottle. And I got to tell you, I had a great meeting. Brendan Kelly was terrific. I like him. He's a good, really good leader. He's innovative. He thinks outside the box. He's willing to take some calculated risks. So they convinced me that I wouldn't be an event guy. I would actually be able to do some events, but I would be able to be involved with the players, be involved with coaching. So we started a couple of events, 5-star, which was, an elite event where, I got to evaluate the talent and take recommendations and watch film and invite those kids to the event. Well, that's what I was doing as a recruiter for 20 some odd years. I got to get out up close and personal with the kids and coach them, at attack and defense camp. So it wasn't just, hey, you're an event guy, show up and make sure the event runs smoothly and we'll take our money and move on. There was a standard of excellence that was expected from Brendan Kelly and Coach Cottle. It was great to be in an office with Dave Cottle and talk lacrosse every day. I had done that for a whole year and learned a lot. And I spent another year doing it with him and still learn a lot from Coach. Think the world of him. One of the best coaches to coach the game and, one that I don't know that gets enough credit. So my time at Legendary Sports Group, quite frankly, was a great lifeline. I am indebted and grateful to them for it. And they also allowed me during that year to volunteer at Boys Latin High School and coach at Boys Latin and actually coach my twin boys that were juniors. And we had the good fortune of winning the MIA championship that year. So I got to do something that I never got to do before and sadly will never get to do again, which was to spend every day with my twins and coach them. So it was a great year from that standpoint. And again, LSG played a huge role in that for me.
That kind of gratification is awesome. Like to feel that grateful for that opportunity.
Frank, you know what? I've spent, and I'm doing it again now. I spent more time in my life coaching other people's kids and around other people's kids than my own, sadly. And this year away was perspective. It helped me realize how much I do love coaching. It gave me a chance to talk to other coaches about culture, about schemes, about, how they plan their practices, their season. It's amazing what people will tell you when they're not playing against you. So, and I took all that information, I got a notebook filled with thoughts, ideas, and then the chance to just every day show up on a field and be with, Nicholas and Dominic was, what greater gift could a dad get, is to do that with his boys and actually watch them grow and develop and meet, get to know their friends better. So, another group I'm grateful to is Boys Latin and Brian Farrell.
Sure.
I know it's high school, it's not college, but what a great perspective I was able to get working with high school kids.
We talk all the time.
That will serve me well here at Syracuse and, hopefully one day serve me well as a head coach again.
Thanks for saying that, because we always try to bring out and understand, and we always are told about how much lacrosse is about family, and that's why I keyed in on that comment. Go ahead, Garrett.
Appreciate it.
Well, now for the I think seeing an S on you is still, mind blowing to me. I'm getting more used to it as we're going along here, but let's talk about how that came about.
Yeah, you want to talk about the S. Funny story. when I first took the job, I came up to meet with Coach Gate, and Gary and I know we go back a long way. So Coach and I are sitting down, and I said, "Look, I'd like to get out on the road. Can I get my recruiting test out of the way?" So, boom, got that taken care of that day. And I said, "Look, if I'm going to go out on the road, I don't have any gear. Would you mind? I mean, can I get a hat? Can I get a T-shirt? Can I get something?" And Coach looked at me and he said, "Yeah, sure." So I went and did some human resources stuff, and again took care of my recruiting test. And I came back, and sitting there with 2 laundry bins filled with gear. So appreciated it, packed it up, took it on the road. And at my first event, I'm walking from one field to the other, and there's a gentleman walking toward me, and he's looking at me. And when someone tilts their head and looks at you, either they're wondering who you are, or do they know you or recognize you, or is there some connection?
What are you doing here?
Right. And the guy looks at me, and as he gets closer to me, he starts shaking his head. He goes, "I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Not a bit." He just kept walking. So, it was interesting how this happened. When Coach called me, Gary called me. I missed his call. He left a message at about 11 o'clock at night. And I'm not much of a sleeper, so I woke up and looked at my phone. It was about 3 a.m., and I saw that I missed his call, listened to his message, and it was, "Hey, I don't know if you're interested, but I just took the head coaching job at Syracuse," which I had heard and known. And I wanted to know, are you interested in being our defensive coordinator and, getting back in the game? Do you want to keep coaching? And I texted him right back. Now, I don't realize that it's 3 a.m. He's probably sound asleep, but he reached out the next day, and we had a great conversation. I have tremendous respect for him. Guys won everywhere, at every level. So if you don't think, the first thing I think about is, 1, getting back into coaching, but 2, I get to be around a guy that has won at every single level he's been at. You don't think there's something I can pick up there? So we chatted. He asked me to come up. So I came up. For the first time in my life, I wore something orange. I actually went out and purchased an orange and blue tie, and met him at his home. We sat down for about 3 hours, and the conversation was just, very easy, free-flowing. I mean, we played against each other for many years and spent some time as teammates, actually, at Mount Washington Lacrosse Club, and got to know his wife a little bit. And when he offered me the job, I said, "Well, I'd like to think about it for a night and just, make sure I do my due diligence," knowing full well that it's what I wanted to do. Right. And went home and sat down with my girlfriend, who I live with, had a conversation with my sons, because obviously it meant me coming up to Syracuse and them staying in Maryland to finish their senior year at Boys Latin would not have been appropriate to uproot them.
Right.
And, also, they're both committed to North Carolina. And here I am as the assistant coach at Syracuse. So I wanted to make sure, you mentioned family, Frank, and I wanted to make sure this was a decision that didn't disrupt my family and my girlfriend and my life with her and her kids, and accepted it. And it has been fabulous. The kids have been wonderful. Everybody here has been extraordinarily welcoming. I always knew Syracuse cared about lacrosse. I just don't know that I knew how much. It's been a great place to work, a breath of fresh air. Working with Coach has been great. I mean, last night we just sat in the office together for about an hour, after everybody had left, talking about offense and how I would defend something. And it's just been a phenomenal opportunity to get back in the game, and a privilege to be at a program that's associated with, Roy Simmons Jr., Roy Simmons III, and Gary and Paul Gate, and such great players and such a championship history. So as you can tell, I'm like a kid in a candy store, being, back in the office, watching film and out on the field with the guys. It's been great.
Now, I have a question. college lacrosse has always been the thing. Like we have the PLL, we had the MLL, we have the NLL, and they've always had attendance issues. College has never had this problem. What do you think that maybe the pros need to do following in the NCAA mold to try and bolster? Because I know that was one of the big problems with MLL before they merged.
Sure. Well, we're in a challenging position because, our sport, while growing, is not played everywhere.
Mhm.
It's played in Canada. It's played in, Maryland and New York and Pennsylvania and Jersey and now in Texas and, Florida and Arizona. It's growing,
Mhm.
but it's not everywhere. They're not, I don't know how much they're playing lacrosse at a high level in Montana or in Idaho or, but it's in Vegas now and Utah. And we got a couple terrific kids from the West Coast on our team now.
Mhm.
But so that in and of itself is a challenge, is that it's not played everywhere. Not sponsored by every, high school district. The other thing is television. This game will grow in the NLL is starting to figure it out.
Yeah.
Is getting games either on ESPN or ESPNU or the PLL getting on. I think it was NBC, if I remember correctly. Those are the big steps toward, getting this sport to really mature and grow and become a national sport. Well, when folks in Montana are watching lacrosse on TV, and now all of a sudden it starts to become a household thing, and they're saying, "Wow, this game's terrific, fast-paced, physical. What skill level?" Then I think we start to take those steps toward growing the professional game. ESPN has been a great partner, and ESPNU of lacrosse,
Mhm.
but it'd help if it was on all the major networks.
I agree.
So those are challenges. And when you think back to football and basketball, these are the places they started. Football, guys weren't making a lot of money. They were getting their teeth kicked in for very little and, not a lot of publicity. But then all of a sudden, the right person invests. It certainly helps our sport that a guy like Joe Tsai is really interested in our sport. We need people like that are, pillars in our business and financial communities and connected to entities that can, get lacrosse to the places it needs to go to be successful. So
Right.
we still got a long way to go, but what the NLL is doing and now what Paul Rabel is doing with the PLL, I think we're starting to take steps toward that.
Frank?
Yeah. No, I'm good. We're down to a few seconds. I don't know if I should. It would be unfair to ask you a question with so little time. So instead, what I'm going to say is, I really appreciate you, Dave, taking the time to be here with us. We really appreciate it. The game of lacrosse is something that, to add to what you were saying, simply, the more it's on TV, the more people that see it that don't have natural access to it. I agree with your point completely, and Gary does too.
Mhm.
We both believe that it's what happens on the TV and on normal TV where people don't have to search for it, where it finds them as opposed to them look for it. And if people don't know about lacrosse, they're not looking for it. So the best way for that to change is to have lacrosse, come in front of them. And once it does, Gary?
Yeah, once it does, well, hell, it's going to go like wildfire, and it's already starting now, especially here in Canada with TSN. There's been many a time I've been sitting in a pub with a phone watching the game, and before I know it, there's 5 or 6 people watching the game with me. Now, having that on a screen, and amazingly enough, watching everybody go, wow, what is it?
Yeah. Well, that was I was going to say is it's great on your phone. It'd be even great if you were watching in the pub on the TV in the pub.
Mhm.
That's happening. That
Yeah.
is happening.
Starting now.
Well, if
And
those things happen, you're going to find more grassroots. Then our sport's growing from the bottom up. Then and people are excited. They'll start to create programs for young kids, and then the grassroots will take hold.
That's the key. The key is to be to be identified by the general public. Gary has always said, and I'm sorry, Gary, I'm talking for you again, but I feel, just because I feel the same way, is that the game just needs a chance to be witnessed, and then once it's witnessed, then you can go pay for the front edge of a seat, because you'll always find yourself on the edge of that seat if you go to the game, because it's so exciting. So yeah,
I agree wholeheartedly.
it's something that's very important as far as promoting the game. We love promoting the game. And again, I really thank you, because without, folks like you, this game won't progress. And what's really important, Dave, you and everybody else that we've had on this show, and Gary, I really believe this in my heart. It's all about, we talked about culture. The opportunity for success with lacrosse will be met by people who have worked very hard to make it really good. And that's the key. It's just like what you talked about as far as organizing a team. For the game to be successful, it has to be ready to accept that success. And it takes a lot of hard work, like you said, with the National Lacrosse League, with Sakevich and company, doing the right things to attract the attention of people who maybe don't know about the game. And it's why I always start this thing, as Gary knows, with what got you into lacrosse?
Yeah, well, for me, it was a neighbor around the corner, so it can happen anyway.
Any way at all.
And more times than not, that's what we hear. I was catching, and Aaron Bold was singing. I was playing catcher, and in the other field they were, and I just kept turning my head, wondering what they were doing, and I had to go check it out. And next thing you know, there you go. So
Sure
yeah,
enough.
that happens more times than not. I really want to thank you, Dave. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to chat with us. It's been absolutely fantastic.
Yep, no thanks necessary. My privilege to be here, and thanks to you two for having me.
It's our pleasure. Thank you, Dave.
Have a great night.
Yes, you
All
as
right.
well.
Thank you.
All right, for Dave Pietramala, Hall of Fame player and coach. Glad we could bring him out of his shell. Gary, thanks to you as well. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching Lacrosse Talk NLL Style, seen live Thursdays at 6 p.m. this week, usually at 4 p.m. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Lacrosse Talk NLL Style news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out the SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Pick up a stick if you can.
Yes.